as been our tradition, we try to have different speakers, and we thought with the congressional seat coming up, it was important to see what these federal candidates had to say about business and as it relates to what's happening here in the Central Valley. After the retirement of Kevin McCarthy, midterm, we have now a special election and a general election. It's very complicated how it all works, but the general election will happen first in March, and then a special election to fill the seat for a short amount of time, from basically June 1st-ish through the end of the year, will happen then a couple weeks later. We invited the 4 leading candidates from the Republican side because this is the most conservative seat in California. And the person who takes this seat most likely will hold it for as long as they want because it is so far, it's so red. This is one of the only seats in California. I think it'd be virtually impossible for someone from the other party to take the seat. So what we've done is prior to this, I had a little fancy number system and I gave everybody numbers. So we're going to start in order and we're going to rotate. After 10 seconds to go, I'm going to kick the lights on so they be quiet and move on. I've got a bat back here that I can hit anybody but Mike because he's a sheriff and he's probably carrying, so I got to be nice to him. So, but anyways, we're gonna get this thing started, and I've had some questions. I'd like to welcome David Toft and GB Wire. I invited him to come and record this because political debates are not, and forums like this are hard to find. And this seat does go from basically Fresno all the way down to Kern County, and takes in Hanford and Tulare with the redistricting portions of that area. So it's important for the Valley, it's important for CenCal, and it's important for our bankers and our partners to understand what's going on. So with that, the first question I'm going to have is let them introduce themselves, and the first person to speak will be Kyle Kirkland, and he'll 90 seconds.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Kyle Kirkland. I'm a candidate for Congress, as Tal said. I'm the business man that's in the group here running for the seat. I'm very excited to be here with you today and share some of my views. Many of you know me as I run Club One Casino here locally. I also am chair of the Fresno Chaffee Zoo, and I have a large animal rescue. Early in my career, I started in finance. Went on, I was chairman of Steinway Musical Instruments, which is a large musical instrument manufacturer, for a number of years. The reason I'm in this race is because I feel we have very real solvable problems. I'm one of the only candidates in the race that has actually done that from a business perspective and solved problems from a business perspective. I signed in front of paychecks. I suffered through COVID closures. I have been in regulated industries my entire life and know how to push back on government overreach. And I look at this race as an opportunity to deal with our economy, get it back on solid footing, look at what's happening at the border and solve that crisis, but also to push back against government overreach into our lives. So thank you for having me here today, and I look forward to sharing some of my views.
Thank you. Our next candidate, David Giglio.
Hi everybody, thanks for having me. Some of you might remember the name. I probably tried to call you last time when I ran in the 13th district, but my name is David Giglio. I'm a former high school history teacher and now a small business owner. I got a sports collectibles shop in Clovis. I think what sets me apart here is I'm the only one that got in this race to challenge Kevin McCarthy directly when he was in it. And I believe, we need some more disruptors in Washington. One of the things in the last 3 years I've learned in politics is that both sides in Washington kind of feast on the status quo. And I think if we had more people in there that focused on getting things done and delivering on the promises that they make rather than getting reelected, we'd have a much better country and a much better society. I've seen in the classroom, we're losing generations of kids because we're failing in our schools, and it's leading to problems that Mike ends up seeing on the streets because we've taught kids their whole lives there's no consequences for poor actions. So I believe that this is a very important race. I think it's a very important time in our country, and I think we need people that want to go there and get things done, not just promise things, not just talk a good game like I feel that Kevin did. We need to follow through in our things. When you make promises to voters, you got to be willing to do whatever it takes to get that stuff passed. And I think it'd be a lot better if we had more disruptors in Washington and less people that were focused on just, staying there for 20 plus years.
Thank you. Mike?
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Boudreaux. I'm the sheriff of Tulare County. I've been there for about 11 years, but I've been in law enforcement for 37 years. I have been in the elected position seeing things that are happening all across this country when it comes to poor legislation, the impacts that it takes to public safety, the issues of an open and unsecured border when it comes to illegal immigration, and what's taking place in our country, right in the Central Valley and the high desert. I am in this race because I was recently in the grocery store and a young lady was buying milk, and she had to send her daughter back to change the gallon of milk for a half gallon of milk because she couldn't afford it. I went ahead and paid for her groceries, but what I talked to her about is that she couldn't afford because of what the economy is impacting her with. I'm in this race because I have a 16-year-old daughter who I don't want sitting in line having to decide between a full gallon of milk and a half gallon of milk. I have a lot of energy ideas, I have a lot of issues when it comes to our agriculture and water, and we'll get into those issues. But the biggest issue for me is public safety with an open and unsecured border. I'm the only candidate in this race who has looked in the eyes of a human trafficker, who have brought small children across the border. I'm the only candidate in this race who has arrested people who have been deported 3 times over, shot and killed friends of mine in a parking lot of a mini-mart. We are impacted by the open border, the unsecured border, and our public safety should be number 1. Thank you.
Next question, Dave, we'll start. CenCal Business Finance, we're lucky enough to have, as of tomorrow, nearly $250 million loan portfolio servicing SBA 504 loans. And we have helped create or maintain over 50,000 jobs in Central California over the combined last 100 years between our 3 offices. It's a federal program that does not cost taxpayers one dime, but does require support from the SBA. If elected, how would you view the SBA and funding requests to help this department stay operational? First, 90 seconds, David.
Well, I would say one thing, I'm a small business owner too. I've worked with the SBA. I value the things they do, and I think as Republicans, one of the things we need to focus on is saving America's small businesses. That's also one of the reasons I'm in this race. I went through COVID. People told their businesses should not be open. We have to do whatever we can to prioritize small businesses over, mega corporations. So I believe that these types of programs, 110% in support of them, keep them going, and that's one of my top priorities, is making sure small business is the top priority of people in Washington, because that's the backbone of the American economy. And without our small businesses, our economy collapses.
Thank you. Mike?
Well, I'm in agreement. We have to support our small business, but one thing that we must do in a country is begin to make sure that we have a dollar that's strong. The world's economy is focused on the American dollar. We are impacted with small business and big business alike. We need to make sure that we're starting to focus on reducing the regulation with small business. We have to reduce the taxes that are impacted with small and big business alike. We're over-regulated, over-taxed, and it's impacting the bottom line of every business in the valley and the high desert, quite frankly, all across the country. And we have to be able to support groups just like this to have a voice so that we can begin to impact on a grander scale, putting people back to work. When we're paying $22 an hour at McDonald's, but yet I've got secretaries in my office that are getting paid $17 an hour, small businesses have to be impacted with an issue where they can't afford to pay. We must be able to support the strong dollar in America, and I agree, we must continue to support voices just as with this group.
Kyle?
Well, listen, first of all, I'd like to thank the SBA. My business actually survived today because of it. We were closed in our entirety during COVID, and having their support was deeply helpful to us, and 190 people that work for me appreciate that. And small business is the backbone of what we do. It's critical that we keep it going in agriculture and energy up here. It certainly is the biggest form of employment. When you look at the economy, I think anything we can do to support that is good. I've spent my career in regulated industries pushing back, and I think one of the tragedies for small businesses to wake up every January 1st with 1,000 new bills that you have to comply with and all sorts of new regulations. It chokes you off in terms of your ability to hire. It chokes you off in your ability to operate, get insurance, all of these things. So as in Congress, I would push to make sure that our small businesses are protected through tools like the SBA. So again, deeply appreciative of the SBA's work, understand what it does for this economy, and frankly, our national security. So I'm deeply supportive of that.
Thank you. Kyle, you'll start next on this easy, simple question, 90 seconds. Do you support comprehensive immigration reform? Let me finish. I gotta get a little more in here. If elected, how would your priorities change over the current system? How would you handle the over 10 million plus illegals that are on our soils today? How would you handle it, and your thoughts on real solutions for immigration reform? 90 seconds.
Well, clearly we need to reform our immigration policy. We can't have unlawful immigration. I think everyone supports lawful immigration. We certainly need that to support our agriculture community and our economy. The real challenge is the 11 million folks that are here undocumented today. I think it's impractical to just say, okay, we're going to have amnesty for everyone. It's certainly deeply unfair to those who are here lawfully. And also, too, just exporting or deporting all of them is impractical as well. So I think we have to take a hard look as a business person. I step back to try to separate myself from the emotion of it and look at the hard data. Where are those folks today? How are they comprised? What's that demographic mix look like in terms of their potential contribution to society? And what's a clear path that we can put in place, perhaps for them to earn their citizenship, but more importantly, to make it so it's fair to the other folks that are here struggling to pay for their own housing, healthcare, food, education. It is deeply unfair for some of the policies in the state to basically say, hey, listen, we're going to throw up an open border sign and also put a free buffet up there for those of you who break the law. So I think we need to take a hard look at that. But as a business person, I go in and look at the data first, talk to the experts, the folks on the ground, and then come up with a practical solution.
Thank you. David?
I believe pretty strongly in this. I believe you don't have a border, you don't have a country. And I think I probably align mostly with former President Trump on this and the fact that we need to close the border. It's a national security issue. I also think it is impractical. We cannot have amnesty. Amnesty is going to cost this country $4 trillion. It's going to incentivize more people to flood towards the borders. We need to close our borders. People who are here, you got to send them back. If they've been crime-free, they can go through an expedited process to come back and be granted citizenship. And we also need to prioritize the kind of people we're letting into our country. We need the best and the brightest. It's not a mean thing. You need people who are going to come here and contribute to our society and not be a burden and not go against our values and our beliefs. I think we see what's going on in Europe with just unfettered chain migration, and we have to start doing a better job of that. It's public safety concern. It's also financial concern. It's a drain on our citizens. My wife works in healthcare. Many of our hospitals are overwhelmed. They're going bankrupt because they're not being reimbursed for services that they have to provide. Federal government doesn't want to do it, and the states don't want to do it. So I think we have to close the border. We have to focus on who we're bringing in, best and the brightest. And we also, we cannot afford amnesty. It's just a price tag that we cannot afford. And that's where I stand on that.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, so I'm glad I'm able to talk about this. We've got a really cute commercial floating around right now about me. Look, I'll tell you right now, I'm not about open borders. I've received the endorsement of the majority of law enforcement in the Central Valley. If I was for open and unsecure borders, I would not be receiving the endorsements of public safety. I'm the only candidate that was invited by Donald Trump to go visit the border with him, where I stood shaking hands with President Trump talking about a secure border. Here's how I believe. We need to turn off the fire hose, close the border, secure the border, and keep people from coming into this country. Because quite frankly, it's not the Mexican nationals that are causing us harm, other than the cartels, human traffickers, and all the like that we have to shut down. We have people that are flowing into this country, folks, that want to kill us. We have people from countries who consider us the second Israel. We immediately must secure the border. Then we have to come up with a reasonable solution to move forward with the millions of people that are illegally in this country. First and foremost, what I would do, take away all the free stuff. Quit giving away free stuff. You quit giving away free stuff and they won't be coming to our country. There needs to be a judicial process that they have to go through and a legal process in which to come into this country. If you want to be an American citizen, if you want to be an American, we invite you. But there's a legal process that you must take. And for those who are already here, I come across stories each and every day dairymen, ranchers, farmers who have people that have been on their farms for 20 years. And people want to say that we deport them all? No, I agree. We must have a reasonable solution to move forward once we turn off the fire hose. But we immediately must secure and shut down that border.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, next one, David will answer first on this one. The United States continues to confront security challenges around the world. While U.S. public support for direct military intervention has wavered, our military is under attack from state-sponsored groups in Iran, as well as cyber attacks from China, Russia, and others. How will you, as a member of Congress, lead on these policy issues and security challenges without doing more harm than good?
Well, one of the things I think that no surprise, I think weak leadership emboldens bad actors around the world. And I think many of us in this room would probably agree that we have extremely weak leadership at the top of our government right now. And to me, it's no surprise that these bad actors have started acting up in the last 3 years. So at the top, we need somebody who is going to be no nonsense. Now, listen, I believe in strong national defense, but I believe in national defense. I think we have to balance it out with, we cannot be spending, we are $34 trillion in debt. We cannot be spending our time and our money fighting proxy wars across this country. We need to defend our nation, but we also cannot be an aggressor in what we're doing. And there's no harm with supporting our allies, but we also cannot go out there looking for trouble. So I think that it starts at the top with the leadership. I think that when you had President Trump in the White House, people knew he meant business. And when there was a direct attack on the United States or some sort of cyber attack, he responded precisely and immediately. Right now, they just have no fear of the current commander-in-chief of our country, and they see what he's promoting in our military. And so it's just emboldening them to push the boundaries. You can't give these people an inch. If they think you're not going to give them an inch, they're not going to misbehave. So I think it really starts at the top. But I believe in funding our military, but I also do not support spending lavishly on never-ending proxy wars. We just spent 20 years in Afghanistan, and we saw it collapse in hours. We cannot be getting ourselves into those boondoggles again. It will destroy this country, and quite frankly, the next conflict is likely to lead into a global world war. So we have to do everything we can to stop that.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, I believe one of the first things we need to do is remove Biden from office. He is weak. He shows the world that we are weak. And because of that, we've had over 170 attacks on our military forces, even most recently. We don't let balloons from China flow over the top of our country and think that it's just okay. We should have shot that thing down immediately. They're already engaging in TikTok wars when it comes to the social media and endangering our children, but it's more than that. They're able to cyber attack our country. We don't want them to be able to shut down our military, shut down our drones, shut down anything in regards to technology, and quite frankly, I think we're a little behind the curve. We have to make sure that we're one of the most advanced, technologically advanced, and smartest countries in the world. We'll get into the education, I think, in a little bit, but we have to start with our children in the elementary school, teaching them math, English, science, and the ability to counter cyber attacks as they become into the adult world. We have to have a strong president, remove the president if he's not holding our country to the highest levels of military standards. We should have the strongest, most powerful military in the world, which we do. But we must be able to produce that stuff here, steel, microchips. We're looking to Taiwan for our microchips, and microchips should be developed here in the United States for the advancement in technology, in our war in technology.
Well, certainly we need strong leadership at the top, and I'm an advocate of replacing President Biden in that. I believe very strongly that the United States deserves and is looked to be a world leader in conflict when there's clear moral high ground, as Israel has in Gaza. I'm a supporter of our allies, such as that. In other cases where it's less clear, I think we have to be more judicious. I do think that in terms of funding our military, I believe that other countries should help us in that. I don't think they should always look to us to pick up the tab for every world conflict. What I do think is that our economy allows us to be, a very powerful and compassionate nation. We're the only nation that can win a war and then rebuild you. Right? We can do that because we have a very powerful economy. So I look to home and say, you know what? It's a lot easier in my life when I've got money in my pocket And instead of sitting there and borrowing money from the Chinese and the Japanese to fund foreign conflict, I look to us to say, let's be more judicious in our funding, let's be more judicious in our use of funds, let's look at the conflicts that we're going to get involved with real purpose, and not just pick up the tab for every conflict across the world.
Thank you. Okay, next question, we'll start with Mike. This question is a little off, maybe not quite normal for a debate, but I think it's important. As someone who's ran for public office, and these gentlemen that are running for office, it's a big commitment. And I think there's rules in place on elections and how they're run and how you get on the ballot. And anybody involved in that should know those rules, and they're very clear. So running for public office is a privilege and a lot of work. One candidate in this race failed to follow the rules and registered for 2 different offices in the same election, both Congress and State Assembly. Vince Fong then sued to get his name on the ballot, and now the Secretary of State has filed an appeal to remove his name from the general election ballot. His name will be on the special election ballot as he's legally qualified to run for that seat. But given the situation where he failed to follow the rules and register for 2 seats in the general election, his name may be removed after this election and the election in mid to late March. My question for you, starting with Mike, is what are your thoughts on this issue?
You're gonna get from me too.
Of all the series, it landed on me first. And listen, it's not for me to decide. That's for a courtroom to decide. That's for a judge to decide. But what I will say is I'm a law and order guy. There's no one up here on this table. I've talked to these gentlemen. They're good men. There's no one up here that misunderstood the rules. Nobody. And at the end of the day, we all signed a piece of paper saying we know where we're supposed to be, when we're supposed to come, and we can't get off. Once we're in, that's why we had people in the history, where in the course of history, you had people who have signed and got on ballots where they died and won elections. You don't get to come off. There's special reasons for that. But I would just say as we move forward, I would hope that the judges who are deciding this case understand the impacts to the voter. Because right now, the voter is going to vote for Assembly and for Congress. I'm not sure what would separate me from running for Board of Supervisor, District Attorney, and Sheriff all at the same time. The importance of rules is that we follow them. If you circumvent those rules, then you've disenfranchised the voter. Not only the voter, but those who support one or the other candidate, in addition to the funding that goes into these races. They're very expensive. And so my answer to that would be is it's not for me to decide. I understood the rules. And so I'm here understanding the rules. No one else in this race misunderstood the rules. And so it's for the judicial system to decide, and we'll accept whatever decision they come up with.
Thank you, Kyle.
Sure, there's 1 or 2 ways to look at it. You can say that he didn't follow the rules or he didn't read the directions, and neither one of those is good. I think for somebody that's going to be in elected office, I look at this and say, I'm not the career politician. I'm here to read the directions, figure it out. As Mike said, get on the ballot lawfully. I'm running for 1 seat, and that's United States Congress, 20th District. There's no mistake. If you vote for me, you know what seat I'm running for. With respect to Assembly Member Fong, listen, as Mike said, courts are going to decide that, but I think all of us up here need to engage in the debate, let people understand who we are, what we stand for, and what it would mean if we were elected to office. So right now, I'm focused on my campaign and how to get the message out to people so they understand what I'm about, but very clearly, the 3 folks up here at the desk know how to read and follow directions.
Well, I was a teacher, so following directions is a battle I had to fight every day in the classroom. But, Mike and Kyle were probably a little nicer than I've been on this issue. I spoke up on this pretty early when it happened, and I believe that, quite frankly, I'm disappointed, and I wish Vince Fong were here today to answer this question, because I believe that this is one of the reasons I'm running for office, is that we have a group of people at the top who kind of believe the rules don't apply to them. They want all of us to follow the rules, but when they want to do something, there's like, oh, I'm going to do it anyway, and I'm going to go to court, and I'm going to get it done because I'm Vince Fong, Kevin McCarthy's best buddy, and I should be allowed to do whatever I want. So as Republicans, this is also an important issue. We've spent 3 years criticizing Democrats during the 2020 election for circumnavigating state election laws. We say, you guys broke election law, you should have followed it, you can never do that again. And then here we are, where you have a Republican candidate endorsed by the former Speaker of the House willingly breaking election laws to get his own way. It's incredibly disrespectful to the voters. It discredits everything we've been saying for 3 years. Quite frankly, I think that Vince should do the right thing and not bow out of this race and go back to the assembly. He said the Lord spoke to him and that his place was in the assembly, and then 2 days later he decided that was bad advice. So I think that it's disrespectful for Kevin McCarthy and Vince Fong to be carrying this out. So.
Oh, that was a good answer. That was good.
Okay, so we had a little bit this morning, which is good. Okay, so these gentlemen were so quick, and I know we're always on a tight time frame. So I've got one more question. I'm going to have David Taub ask a question for the candidates, and then we'll have closing, and then we'll get on with our program. So my final question is: President Trump looks to be the leading contender as the Republican presidential nominee. If you were to speak to Trump about Valley issues, what would you tell him, Mike?
I have spoken with President Trump. I've met with him a couple different times. And let me tell you, he understands the Central Valley. He understands the water because he's met with Devin Nunes, he's met with Valadeo, he's met with McCarthy. He understands the issues facing our valley when it comes to water. I personally think that not one farmer in this valley should be charged for water. It's a matter of national security, and the federal government should be paying for that water. How are we going to feed our troops if we can't feed the country? He understands the issues of illegal immigration. I sat and talked with President Trump, and they did not give his statement accurately in the news. When he was talking about illegal immigration, he said, we need to get rid of the most felonious, egregious, violent people that has entered our country. Everyone else, we got to start working with a reasonable plan. And that's what he said. And now that the floodgates are open, it's not the same statement as when I spoke to him a few years ago, because the floodgates are open and it's out of control. It's out of control, and I would support President Trump, who quite frankly is going to be the next president of the United States. And I hope to be that congressman sitting with him, fighting with him, because I will bring the same issues to him in remembrance of the issues facing the Central Valley and the High Desert. We don't ever want to forget about the High Desert. This is an incredibly weird district. It goes from Clovis to Hanford to Lemoore, Visalia, Tulare into Bakersfield, makes a weird V shape, and then shoots off into Rosemont, Richmond, and Tehachapi. But every one of these cities has the same issues. And we can use President Trump to bring money into this district, focusing on the real needs of this district. And I believe that that involves agricultural, sustainable water sources, energy, and the issues of immigration, that we can develop a reasonable plan with which he understands.
Thank you. Okay, Kyle.
Sure. With respect to President Trump, I think as the business person in this race, I see what he sees, and that is that the Central Valley is an incredibly vibrant economy, incredibly important to the United States, both in feeding us energy production and certainly what we produce here. We feed the world, right? And I feel very strongly that President Trump would look at the water and situation here and say, hey, listen, people need to eat. Same thing with energy production. You know, I grew up in Maine, and a great equalizer was when you were hungry and cold, it didn't matter, you know, what party affiliation you were. It didn't matter what your socio-demographic group was. If you just wanted that to stop. And in the Central Valley, certainly down in Kern County, we have energy production that needs to be supported, strong agriculture to feed the world, continue to provide our resource independence here in the United States. So I believe President Trump understands what's important in driving the economy. And you know, a good part of that, a big part is that it's having lawful immigration. We need lawful immigration to support valley agriculture, and he knows that, right? So I would look with President Trump and say, hey, listen, let's talk about the needs of this very diverse district. It's about the size, feels like it's the size of Rhode Island when you're driving it, but and talk about how do we keep this sustainable, but also too, how do we keep the American dream alive so the next generation of people can continue to start small businesses, not be suffocated by excessive regulation. So I'd be a big favor of expressing to President Trump that, hey, we need to cut back on the regulatory burden on small businesses in the Central Valley.
So I think I'm probably in agreement with these. In terms of water, would be my number one issue. And I do believe President Trump is going to be the next president of the United States again. And I hope he's the next president of the United States again. And he was out here a few months ago now, and he actually talked about the water issue again, because he was very close to getting some major reforms done. And one of the things he said is how he lamented that the clock kind of ran out. You know, I have a very comprehensive water plan on my website. It's davidagiglio/water that I want to get done. And this involves solving this crisis once and for all. This has to be done. And I believe we can utilize the NDAA, the National Defense Act, to help fund this program. But we also got to bring the 7 states together that depend on water from the United States, like we did back in the 1930s, get them to work together and come up with a solution. So water would be the #1 issue. This is something that has to be solved. It's a national security issue. You know, one of the blessings, I guess, you know, a lot of people criticize me for being an East Coaster, but I never, until I moved out here, realized how important this area is. And there's a lot of people around the country that need to understand that this issue is an American issue, and we have to solve it. So I would take that to President Trump on day one, get this commission started again, and let's solve this once and for all, because we don't need we can't afford any more Band-Aid fixes, and our farmers can't afford any more Band-Aid fixes.
Thank you. Next question asked by David Todd with GB Wire. Kyle, you'll start, then David, then Mike. David?
Thank you, Tal. Gentlemen, if elected to Congress, what specific projects would you want to fund in the district, or more specifically the Fresno-Clovis area?
Yeah, well, if I'm elected again, as I said, I want to continue to push on, actually, in terms of funding projects, I'm going to work to remove regulation, make it easier for businesses to operate in the district and in Fresno-Clovis. As a business owner and operator, I wake up every January 4th with a bunch of new laws that I have to comply with. I've got a regulator looking over one shoulder and a plaintiff's attorney looking over the other. So I'm going to work on trying to get those regulations pulled back on small businesses. And what's interesting is with small businesses, I'm in a regulated industry, and I know I should be in a regulated industry. But there's so many things that we have to comply with that are just nonsensical and put upon us by folks that don't even read the bills through their entirety. So in terms of specific projects, I would look and say, I want to ease the regulatory burden on small businesses and businesses in the valley to make sure that they can continue to operate, employ, and produce the goods and services that we do. That's how we're going to be strong going forward. That's how the American dream is going to stay alive.
Well, yeah, I'm a small business owner. I think Clovis and Fresno have a vibrant small business community. So one of the programs I want to see is something that is very near and dear to my heart and near and dear to everyone. Everyone's talking about now, wage growth. And one of the things, particularly California is making it a burden on small businesses by coming up with these, here's what you're going to pay your workers, and we don't really care. You're either going to pay it, you're going to go out of business, or you're going to end up people getting laid off. So one of the things I want to do is I want to implement a policy where small businesses of 50 or less employees, if you will not be subject to federal payroll or taxes on profits if that money that you would have paid in taxes goes to raising your employees' wages. This way the burden is taken off you and the wages raised naturally. We can't just have the government forcing wage gains and then keeping all of these regulations. That's putting people out of business. It's putting people out of work. Every day we're getting mass layoff announcements. UPS, 12,000 people. Everybody's doing this. So Pizza Hut cutting all their delivery drivers in California because they're saying you got to pay $25, but they're not easing the burdens. So I think conservatives have to come up with plans like that. Utilize tax breaks specifically for small businesses to take away the burdens of requiring them to raise wages.
I have a bunch. But I think that the federal government should hold states responsible when they create legislation that impacts the safety of their citizens. California's a mess. Retail theft is out of control. Gang violence is out of control. Drug violence is out of control. The state, because of its supermajority, has placed all of us in harm's way. The safety of our children in harm's way. We must hold states responsible. That's one. I've got many. But I also believe with agriculture, has anybody ever taken a look at the Alder Reservoir project? It was looked at many years ago in 1900s. It's an idea that we could put a reservoir and collect snowmelt in a very feasible way to feed the Central Valley. And people say, well, David Valadao has really fought to put a dam in. Well, let's not call it a dam. I've negotiated with people who don't even like me and have come out the other side in a good way. Let's put in a hydroelectric plant there. Don't call it a dam. Let's create green energy. There's a lot of different things that we can do here in the Central Valley to help support our agriculture, our small business, big business alike, but public safety is number one. And we must secure that border. That's the number one priority for Americans in this country. And until we stand up, push back, and say enough's enough, our safety is going to be in jeopardy in this country.
Thank you, David. Okay, our final closing, let candidates, whatever they want to speak about for 90 seconds. We'll start for closing remarks with David.
You know, if you had told me 3 years ago that I'd be sitting here right now running for office, let alone for a second time, I probably would have said you were crazy. But, you know, a lot of things have happened in our country. I was a history teacher. I dealt with my uncle passing away during COVID. We were told we couldn't have a funeral for him. And then I turned on the television and I see thousands of people in the streets, you know, burning down cities, and I was told that that was okay. You know, I never wanted to be a politician, but I want to save this country. And you know, I'm doing this. I've lost a lot of money doing this. I've lost a lot of friends doing this. I've been attacked a lot by my own side for being in this. There's a lot of people that probably wish I wasn't sitting at this table today because they probably want me to just go away. But I don't know anyone anything. I'm not doing this for them, for anyone to be part of any club or to get rich. I'm doing this because I want to help people. I knocked on thousands of doors myself the last time I ran, and I had people with tears in their eyes thanking me, saying, nobody ever comes here, nobody talks to us. And I didn't even know if I was going to run again, let alone run against Kevin McCarthy at $20 million. But I looked back and I said, I owe it to those people to keep fighting. You know, I couldn't deliver what the change they wanted the last time. And I said, I have to keep fighting because those are the people that are being left behind. We have a crisis of confidence in this country. People have lost faith in their leaders and they've lost faith in our government. And that's Democrats and Republicans alike. So I don't care about party. I don't care about going there and doing the bidding of big donors and all that stuff. I want to go there and make life better for the American people.
Thank you. Mike?
Well, first and foremost, thanks for having us here this morning. I want to say this. I had a job. I'm the sheriff of Tulare County. I couldn't be more proud to be the sheriff of Tulare County. I work hard for public safety, and I work hard for the families of the Central Valley. I'm also the president of the California State Sheriff's Association. I represent every sheriff in the state of California. I sit with those sheriffs, and we talk about the issues that are impacting California. And it impacts our agriculture, it impacts our businesses, but quite frankly, it impacts our families. I didn't choose to get off into this race. I found myself in this race. But now that I'm in this race, I'm in it to win it. I'm in it because I feel I'm the candidate who can bring real issues with real stories, real life stories. I have sat and talked with victims, as I said before, of human trafficking. I've looked in the eyes of small young ladies who've been raped multiple times coming over our border. I have people who've been shot and killed that I have dealt with. I was a narcotics agent where I went into Juarez, Mexico, dealing with illegal drugs coming into this country. Now I have other scopes of knowledge when it comes to energy and agriculture. I grew up bottle feeding calves. I understand agriculture, but this is what I bring. 38 years of real life experiences in the trenches of this valley. I believe I'm the strongest candidate. I believe the candidate that's not going to be bullied, pushed around, or shoved around by our party or any other party. And I'll be a strong voice for the men and women in this room and men and women who live in District 20 as well as the United States of America. God bless each and every one of you today for being here, and God bless America.
Kyle?
Thank you, and thank you again for putting on this forum and allowing us to speak. For me, when I look at this, you know, I obviously got into the race later than others, and I'm not the career politician. But I looked at it and I said, you know, as someone that's had 4 decades of business experience, that's been in regulated businesses, that's suffered through COVID shutdowns, that has seen and felt government hypocrisy through that, whether it's not being able to get on the ballot correctly or you know, going to French Laundry when everybody else was suffering, their businesses were shut down. And I look at the problems that we have today when I talk to the folks that work for us and the people that I deal with in our community. And the unique thing is, all those problems that we have, whether it's crime, border, economy, cost of living, those types of things, they're transcendent of political policy, party and socio-demographic group. But they're also man-made problems, and we can fix them. Right? But what we need to fix them is someone that can put aside sort of the emotion of it and put aside digging into the political extremes and look hard at the problem and say, okay, forget about assigning blame. How do we understand this problem and solve it? My entire career, I've had to solve problems or I don't get to eat. And I look at the problems that we have on a national scale and I say they're eminently fixable if we can just stop bickering, digging in, pointing fingers at each other, and understand what the problem is and how we can come up with a solution and fund it and afford to do it. And I look very strongly at the candidates in this field, and I have deep respect for everyone in this, but I know that I understand how business works. And I know I understand how to solve problems. And that's why I'm looking for folks to vote from the 20th district. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to thank you all for your time this morning, and it's hopefully everybody in the audience has a better understanding what this race is about, more than the 30-second or 60-second commercial we all see. David, if you'd like to ask some questions out in the foyer, feel free, but at this time, thank you very much for our panel this morning.